Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for another coming to join us for another session of the research process for beginners. So today session is strictly based on popular demand by our audience, talking people who are confused about how to know their variables of the study, that those doing research. So in view of this study, this class was coordinated.
Okay.
So in looking at the variables of study, we have to first of all know what is a variable in your research. Variables are seen as characteristics or factors in a research that is being measured or manipulated or even controlled in order to find answers to our research questions or to answer hypotheses. Those are variables or any characteristics that have variation that are different. So those are variables of the study, and there are two key types of variables of study in research that most times people get confused about it. We have the independent variable and the dependent variable. So you can see something here, descriptive studies. This is no type of variable. So two major types of variables. That type of variables are the control variable, confounding variable, moderating variable, extraneous variable, mediating variables. We also have the ordinal variables, so the case may be. In statistics, there are also other types of variables too, but for this class, I will concentrate more on the independent and dependent variables, but it confuses people a lot. So the independent variables are variables that are being manipulated or that changes, that the researcher changes in order to find an outcome in the dependent variable, another variable, as the case may be, or it's a variable that causes an effect on that variable. So that we call the independent variable. Then this variable is what the researcher tends to manipulate. When you see that, when you hear that a researcher trying to manipulate a variable so that you have an effect on that variable is independent variable. For example, you might be doing a study to find out how teaching method can influence the score of students. That teaching method, those teaching methods are seen as the independent variable, because you may have one or two. You may have two teaching methods you want to test on achievement scores. So that variable that you tend to manipulate or try to change is what we call the independent variable. The independent variable is a variable that is being measured for the outcome. We call the dependent variable. Variable you tend to measure that you don't change it, you just like the outcome variable, or like it is the outcome variable of your study. We call that the dependent variable. Why this topic is very, very important? Because they were asking you, sir, in various works we've done, we don't know which one is the dependent or which one is the independent variable. So remind us that in some studies, most of this variation we are looking at, we see more variation if we are looking at the independent variable and dependent variable in some studies. We have various types of studies. We have the descriptive studies, we have the meta study, correlational studies. It is easier to find the independent variable and dependent variables in correlational study, experimental study, in the causal study, those studies that look at cause effect. But to find the variables, independent variables in descriptive studies is very, very difficult. Like for experimental study now, you say questions like you want to look at the effect of teaching method. I said earlier, teaching method on achievement score. Experimental work where you have a control group and experimental group. Control group might be it's a new teaching method you just developed. You want to see how blended learning or use of mobile learning can influence the achievements in biology. That's a first study. In short studies now, you will have two different methods: the blended learning and the control method, which is maybe the traditional method they use. So that's experimental works. In such studies now, it's very clear. The teaching method is the independent variable. You understand? Let's call it IV. Then the achievement is seen as the dependent variable. It's straightforward. In another study too, in correlational study, you want to see the relationship between knowledge and attitude. Let's say knowledge is K, attitude is A. Very straightforward. The K is being manipulated. The A is the effect. So if you are straightforward, you just know that knowledge is if don't say how knowledge influence attitude. Knowledge is seen as independent variable, attitude is what dependent variable. You can change it the other way around. You can say you don't see the effect of attitude on knowledge. Then you say that the attitude is independent variable, knowledge is dependent variable. That's it. So clear. But for descriptive studies, most descriptive studies don't have independent or dependent variable. Because in descriptive studies, what we're trying to do, we're trying to describe a phenomenon or trying to look at a profile. Most of them don't have it. Like if you say for example now we're looking at we want to observe the knowledge of waste recycling in residents in certain community. We're also trying to describe knowledge of people, particular place. In short studies now we don't have the independent or dependent variable, we just have independent variable there, knowledge. We want to describe knowledge as well. So when you now talk about when we want to have a an independent variable in discrete studies, most times it's when we look at the research questions. Maybe we see people saying that how does age influence the knowledge of waste recycling? How does should demographic variables influence the knowledge of waste recycling? You start seeing those things in the research questions. So you start seeing that okay, the discrete studies tend to have independent variables, but just the topic at times, we won't just see it that way. So please take note. Sorry for students. Not all studies have dependent and independent variable, especially descriptive studies. So, in view of this, in this, let's now aside descriptive studies now. If you want to know the independent variable in descriptive studies, you have to go into the research questions mainly to understand. If you say studies descriptive studies, just to describe the knowledge of waste recycling or attitude of waste recycling, practice of waste recycling, just a straightforward description. Don't just describe it at the surface level, the topic level. There's no independent variable. All you have is dependent variable. But if you want to see if you had dependent variable, you have to look at the research questions or the hypothesis inside. Where if you want to see if maybe age influence and knowledge, attitude and knowledge. In view of that, if you see that age is, you know, see how if totally stand to find out how age influence knowledge. Age, in that case, is seen as independent variable. While knowledge is seen as what? Dependent variable. In view of this, I think I've exhausted how to identify the independent and dependent variable in the study. Maybe so later on, if people are still confused more, I can still go deeper into it to make us understand it very well. Then other variables I told you before, we have moderating variable, control variables, there are those variables that are strenuous to the study. Control variables are variables that are kept constant that may affect the outcome we get. Then the moderating variable or strenuous variables are variables that we don't really know much about, but they can affect the outcome. So just if you're saying any variable that have not independent variable, most of the times are variables that are not really being studied, but they are of that may affect the outcome, which we tend to get. In view of this, I think we find a way to look at identify variables, and I believe that from this class, when you see such questions talking about identify independent or dependent variable, you can easily understand it and get it properly. If you want more clarification, please put it on the comment section. After this class, please like, share, and subscribe so that we know what we're doing. Thank you very much. Stay blessed.